We're live.
Hello, everyone. A most hearty welcome on what for me is Sunday, just after high noon. Bienvenidos. You are here today for Cultivating Voices live poetry, our final reading for the month of September, our second September here on Cultivating Voices live poetry. I'm Sandy Yannone. I'm the author of Boats for Women from Salmon Poetry, and I will be your master of ceremonies today for our new books showcase, featuring the books of folks who have published a book within the past year. That's our criteria for a new book. And in fact, one of our authors' books is just on the cusp of being launched, and we're so excited to be always bringing the new book showcases to you twice a month here on Cultivating Voices live poetry, as well as some of our special events. I'll talk about those kinds of things as we get toward the end of the reading, what's up and coming. I so appreciate everyone who posts about upcoming readings, reviews, videos, and poems on our always very active Cultivating Voices live poetry Facebook page during the week. And of course, we do that and assemble here live in Zoom every Sunday. Spending time on the page is a really great way to keep your kind of fingers on the pulse of poetry with poets you've met here during the pandemic and those you've befriended and appreciated before. So again, thanks to everyone for your engagement there and your engagement here in our live poetry readings that we bring to you every Sunday. We appreciate being able to provide this virtual venue. We have always an enthusiastic audience live for our readers and our members from among close to now 3,000 folks worldwide in our international, intersectional, and intergenerational Facebook group. I also want to give a shout out to our readers from last weekend in our wild card open mic, where we had poets reading from Australia, Canada, England, Ireland, Scotland, and the United States. And if you missed that reading or any of our readings, you can watch the wild displays of poetry on the recordings on our Cultivating Voices live Facebook page or our YouTube channel. And of course, thanks to Don Krieger for the production of those opportunities. Well, before we get started with our Fab Four for today, I want to just remind you that the chats are live here in Zoom and on Facebook. So please send out the love to our writers enthusiastically. Well, let's go to the Sunday showcase and to today's poets. I've got like the warm fuzzies today because I'm welcoming some new friends and old friends from my days back when I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska. So it is such a joy to be welcoming today Carolyne Wright, Claire Kelly, Jim Cihlar, and Marge Saiser. I'll be introducing each before they read. So let's get started. Well, first today, honestly, we have a poet who really doesn't need an introduction here on Cultivating Voices, because you've seen Carolyne Wright read with us since the very first weeks of our live open mic in 2020. And Caroline's also been the co-host of our Labor Day specials with Lily Ledbetter. These fabulous readings from the anthology that she co-edited from Lost Horse Press. It's always a very rich experience to hear her poetry with a global perspective and a little more from the more formal biography. Carolyne Wright's new book is Masquerade, and I hope that Christine will put the cover up in your Zoom box.
Hold it up, yeah.
There it is. Masquerade from Lost Horse Press 2021. It is almost hot off the press. Her previous book is This Dream, the World, new and selected poems, also from Lost Horse Press. The title poem received a Pushcart Prize and appeared in the Best American Poetry 2009. Carolyne's been very busy and very prolific in her career. She has 9 earlier books and chapbooks of poetry. And as we mentioned, the incredibly groundbreaking anthology, Raising Lily Ledbetter. I always have it right behind me here, except when I'm not reading it, because I take it down and read it quite a bit. It just doesn't sit there and collect dust. Raising Lily Ledbetter, women poets occupy the workspace from Lost Horse Press 2015. Also, which received 10 Pushcart Prize nominations and 5 as well as 5 award-winning volumes of poetry in translation. Carolyne's a contributing editor for the Pushcart Prizes and has lived in Chile, traveled in Brazil on a Fulbright grant, and she returned to Brazil in 2018 for the Institute Sacartar Artist Residency in Bahia, a Seattle native who teaches for Richard Hugo House. She has received grants from the NEA, For Culture, and Seattle's Office of Arts and Culture, among others. And as if this isn't enough, once the pandemic subsides, she will be heading toward a Fulbright U.S. Scholar Award that was granted in 2020 to head back to Brazil. Welcome, Carolyne, and thank you for kicking off the reading today, and congratulations on the new book.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody who's here, my fellow readers whom I'm looking forward to meeting. And I am just so thrilled to be here. Oh, and I want to say I am coming to you from Seattle, Washington, on unacknowledged but increasingly recognized Duwamish land on the edges of the Salish Sea, although we are closer to the lake than to the Sound, the Puget Sound, as Anglos call it. Well, I'm going to read, I decided what I'm going to do because Masquerade is a sort of memoir in poetry. And so I thought I would start with reading a number of poems in the first section of the book. So, you know, you can get started and then stay tuned for the later thrilling revelations in, in later readings. So, and again, thanks so much, everybody. Well, I'm going to start with a bang here. The first poem is called At First Sight. Wham! Kismet's metabolic blow dart rams into my breastbone, skewers through rib cage and cartilage, lung sac and heart muscle, and lodges with a boing stunned shudder. What the hell? Firepower's poker stab, Cupid's curse, or Caliban's cri de coeur. Well, that's what it felt like. So here's a slightly more decorous and formal continuation, if you've ever had that happen to you. Round at first sight. Through the window's louvered blinds, you glide in profile across the room, angled pitch of your hips, almost a dancer's, backlit by a single kitchen bulb. That's all. Through twilight's translucent blinds, you glide through backlight that falls foursquare on the outside veranda where I hover, waiting for my door to open, glancing through the next door window where you glide in profile, the room falling in foursquare light onto the veranda at my feet. Next to the studio's caretaker, turning the key in my door, angle of your dancer's silhouette, flooding my breastbone with sudden fear. Or is it the single kitchen bulb that silhouettes you in profile in your studio, a reversed mirror image of my own next door, where the caretaker turns the key so that I can step inside my mirror image in reverse? Next door studio, where I will live a year beside you. Fear's light falls on all fours at my feet, your profile in silhouette, the blinds half open. Have you noticed my moment's gaze that goes on a year until I step into my studio and close the door? Your image profiling mine through louvered blinds. I don't know if any of you have ever had that sensation of, a super impact when you just happen to glance and see somebody for the first time at some distance. Okay, so here's probably the next day at a little gathering to get everybody together, one of those meet and greets. It's called Blame It on My Youth. I hum at the Arts Center's opening fete, a tune I've heard for the first time on public radio's after-hours jazz out of Boston. I'm happy by myself this evening, sipping a gin and tonic without the gin, newly arrived as everyone, early October's red letter maple leaves scraping like paper mache scraps against the windows. Where are you as I chat with sculptors and novelists, painters and poets, all of us reading each other's name tags? Ah, yes, that center of stillness near a bookcase. You sit on a braided throw rug on the gallery floor in faded blue jeans and pressed denim shirt, one arm folding your crossed knees to your chest. Even then, you lean into the next moment, gazing into your wine glass with a sly smile, lip syncing whose words to yourself. Have I forgotten that first sight's blow dart has already struck? If anyone asked Ben, the question would puzzle me. Safe? Of course I'm safe. You glance up as I pass, your attention ripples, then veers away. I'm just another woman in the room without a name yet, as conversation swirls and Elvis Costello groans on the stereo. The angels want to wear my red shoes. We haven't yet been introduced. What if the cloud of circumstance had hovered a moment, then eased off? If the future weren't already stitched to the past? This evening, we are all just starting out, all of us too young for blame. And now we're going to go outdoors for a few minutes. this little community beside the Atlantic Ocean is one of the places where you could go, go on a whale watch, and as I like to call it, be watched by whales. As you'll see, that's kind of what happened in this poem. Okay. Watched by whales. Sun floods the dunes this morning with Cape Cod's Indian yellow wash. And I try to scat whistle Herbie Hancock's dolphin dance between my teeth as I bound up the swaying walk the plank steps and give my syncopated tap, tap, tapping on your door. Want to come be watched by whales? I ask, the wooden panels swinging inward and the rectangle of shadow from which you emerge, heavy-lidded, averting your glance as the dunes' lemon reflections strike the planes of your face. And I repeat my invitation, squint grinning to deflect the threat. Above us, wavering V's of geese yelp in unison like a big band's reed section. You gaze down at me as if I were the busybody from Porlock nosing in on your private Xanadu. Say what? You mutter, your voice dusty with reluctance. Have you been at work, asleep? Is a woman with you? Your arm across the door space blocks my view inside. I shiver in late October's sudden chill. Keep it light, I chide myself as I stutter to explain. The season's last whale watch. Some painters, a novelist, and I are getting tickets. Would you like to join? I finish with some quip that Ahab never had it so easy, with Moby Dick. Then flush as the look on your face makes me follow the thread of that comment to its race-baited source. No, you murmur, thanks, then shut the door. The whole exchange, 2 minutes. To your 5 words, I've spilled 5 score, shivering in the quickened breeze, still talking as your door closes. How foolish do I feel? I shrug. I don't believe in all or nothing at all. I've done what I could to be a pal, drawing the line at friendship. I clatter down the rocking steps, still in my right mind, not yet anybody's consolation prize. From inside your shuttered studio, you never see the pod of fin whales frolicking off the prow, breaching and spouting in the slate gray scud as the captain cuts the engines, and in the sudden lull, a young whale breaks from the ponderous royal to leap straight up, nose to house-high tail, flukes against the sky. He arcs over the deck, hanging a moment like a dancer in sheer wind as the railing's length of watchers gasps, and he slides back like a pewter blade, shelving into the wave storm. I grip the rail in a speechless breeze. I never tell you. No man has ever thrust his summer into me like that. And I think I'm going to read one more. I have time, I think, for one more. Continuing on this sort of theme of this sort of motif of dance running through these poems. This one is called The Putting Off Dance. And it was originally published in Raven Chronicles as edited. The guest editor for poetry for that issue was Gary Copeland Lilly, who is also now a Lost Horse Press poet. And it looks like this. You'll see it. It kind of looks like dance moves here. The stanzas are indented and then flush with the left margin and then indented again. The putting off dance. Humming a blues riff from far inland, you lay the moon shells I give you on your table's little dune of letters that have piled up for days, unopened as the bodies of sand dollars. You are the man with whom I share a wall. All morning in adjacent studios, we move between kitchen and work table, each footstep tracking its next door shadow. November's 10-knot gale rattles the veranda, the sidelong windows empty of sky. In the diorama, I imagine this row of studios opens to its cutaway dilemmas. In jest, you're pressing a stethoscope to my wall, X-ray vision switched on full like figments of wishful thinking. Moon shells pile up, signs of the zodiac look both ways. Who says no is out of the question? As long as I type, your voice is the sea in my ear. When I pause, a chair scrapes on your side of the wallboards. You catwalk down the veranda to my door. It's too late to outwit the moment, to redouble my keystrokes in an arbitrary gabble, to reverse your steps, erase your profile through my Venetian blinds. Your honey and mulled wine win this round. Your tongue-tied plea I never quite believe. But my alibis ride a tilting raft. You give me a turquoise amulet with broken clasp. Its damage unexplained as women who ring for you on the downstairs phone. I set an African violet on the sill, its petals meant to deflect you. Who leads? I ask the season's waltz card. Who follows? Our moves tell the future in mirrors. You stumble whenever the phone switches long distance partners. Your zodiac unknown, what sign would claim us from dreams shifting dune house? We go back to our desks as if to lovers, the phone downstairs ringing its two-tone note. Decide, decide. Voices fly out of the letter piles, clamoring for answers. My blood's divided longings. When bedroom lights go out in this coastal town, our footsteps echo across the floorboards. So much diverted sleep between us. Stalling for time, I name old lovers, those who quoted from the complete guide to rejection. Rain squalls off and on all evening like a difficult conversation. Doesn't night's unbroken sky arch like a serious question? Our ends and beginnings threaded on the same strand, each constellation lined up along its own ecliptic. I fear your universe with its own rules. Traceries of North Atlantic sand between my quilted comforter and pillows. I scribble predictions in the dark while the town sleeps, inventing one last reason it wouldn't work. My body up against that wall, braced for giving in. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Brava, brava. The new book, just on the cusp of arrival, is Masquerade. You've just heard it from Carolyne Wright, and the book is from Lost Horse Press. What energy to begin us off today in all those clouds of circumstance. I love that line. It was a singular cloud, but every poem to me illuminated and amplified multiple clouds of circumstance. That what happens in that unique time of human orbits starting to, as you said, do their dance. Really mesmerizing. Oh my gosh, thank you. And those cameos from Elvis Costello and Herbie Hancock. I love it.
And all those, shall we say, old technological references like wall phones downstairs and clacking manual typewriters. Some of you may not remember any of that or never knew it,
Those relics that not from our not too distant past.
Yeah.
Very much in the present with us always. Again, Masquerade. Thank you. And we'll get to see you again next week, I believe.
Yes, that's amazing.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, friends. What arousing first reading for today. And I'm so thrilled to now move to our second reader for today. I first met Claire Kelly when I was at a reading in Calgary, and I heard her poems based on horror films, and I was like so arrested that I did this thing that I sometimes do where I do the cold call and I say, can you come read with us? Like, I take it on a leap of faith to invite someone when the work just grabs hold of me. And that was my experience of the first time hearing Claire Kelly read. Well, Claire Kelly has written 2 poetry collections, One Thing, Then Another, and Maunder. Her poems have appeared in literary journals all across Canada and have, as I mentioned earlier, recently focused on horror films with a feminist twist. That's the fabulous aspect of these. It's unlike anything you've heard. As well as working on the apocalyptic nothingness that is becoming the certain future of Earthlings. If that is not a description of living in the global pandemic, I can't think of, there's the phrase, if there's a catchphrase, there it is, the apocalyptic nothingness that is becoming the certain future of Earthlings. However, Claire reminds us, but there is humor in that with jokes. You'll experience that. Claire lives and writes on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Please welcome Claire Kelly.
Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. And thanks for inviting me. I'm not a shy individual. I welcome any cold calls to readings. That's my bed. This is my office. So getting out into the world through Zoom stuff like this is kind of exciting. Numbers aren't great in Edmonton. I don't know if anyone's caught the now international news about how well we're dealing with the pandemic here. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna be hanging out here a lot. And I would love to do more reading. So if anyone cold calls me, I'll probably say yes, unless, I don't know, unless I say no. Yeah, so I'm here in Amisquachie, Waskagan, Edmonton, and I'm gonna dedicate this reading to Doug Barber. It's from my new chapbook, Another Final Girl, and that's put out by Rahila's Ghost Press. I'm going to open with the title poem. So A Final Girl, the term comes from Carol J. Clover's like groundbreaking film theory book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws, which like when you have an academic text that has a title that's that strong, yeah, kudos. I will say there's a content warning for most of these poems because I'm dealing with horror tropes. This one, A Final Girl, is the girl who survives at the end of by the end of a slasher flick. So it deals with stuff that happens in slasher flicks. If you have to bow out, come back when I'm gone, when I'm off the screen, fair. You weren't warned that you were going to be dealing with horror poems in advance. Another Final Girl. Survival is not enough. Rain plummet, a shirt ripped just so, dirtied and bloodied just so, not enough. You owe me more. I want my time back, what I've been scorched through, this gore thick TikTok carnage. And every second I'll spend tenderly steadying, spluttering breath, toweling away adrenaline rank sweat. Tell me, what is it like to feel calm in a crowd, to feel safe alone at home with the curtains open? This healing could take years, a lifetime. I know it's taking a lot from me. Don't you dare say I'm overreacting. No, I am not screaming at you. I am screaming for me because these sensors are raw, flickering like overhead lights in that hallway I run through again and again. I remember losing my shoes. I remember falling on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, but getting up. I demand more. The world to hold accountable the wrecking I am reckoning with. This is not rebirth. It is not forgetting. I am more than just getting out alive. So most of the poems I wrote as like a project book, you know, like I had an idea and I went through the facets of the idea that caught on to me. This is one I had written before. I decided I wanted to write a period poem, like a menstruation poem, not a poem that takes place in a previous period. And this is what I came up with. I find around half the population finds periods horrific, so I felt like fair game on putting it in the horror chapbook. Once a month, I invasion. Hello, moon of mine, titanic gravity and tidal pull. Colors switching like a giant jawbreaker through the steady licking until my tongue bleeds. They never mention this blood in the candy aisle, how it's necessary for any transformation, but ads still prefer translucent blue falling from orifices. Once a month, TV says, I'm sci-fi under a mottled moon. I bleed mouthwash and Windex. I startle deer and lynx. Don't tell me my blemished face is dappled like Ganymede. Don't raise me like a lantern to reveal all our ladylike. Read weaknesses. You clutch your constant staunch and throw back my complete willingness to let flow. Wastebasket, wastebasket. The moon holds bleached space junk, sun-whitened flags, tiny dimpled golf balls, windless, immaculate footprints. How boring the moon of governments. I clatu barada nicto. I ET phone home. I traverse the nebula, take it in and pour it about me. My moon of shark's teeth and gibbous and scything. My moon bleeds for 5 days and does not die. So I would say half the poems in the book deal with movie tropes and half the poems in the book deal with stuff that scares me. This is the one that deals with a direct movie that I'm referencing. Don't know how many people have seen The Exorcist. First time I watched it, I think I was 19 and hungover at home by myself, and watched it and was like, okay, I get why people talk about this movie. But one thing that always struck me is when I talk to people about the movie, they talk about the girl, but it's called The Exorcist. And in the actual plot of the movie, Reagan's not very important. And that's always bothered me. So this is my poem. It's a haiku sequence about The Exorcist, which I also enjoy. And there's a lot of stuff from Carol J. Clover's book in here as well. She has a chapter about possession narratives and how, like, you need an entryway. The reason women are possessed more is we have more entryways into our body. And yeah, it's an interesting, and you need trauma beforehand. So the family's divorce and stuff like that, and the open window become very important when she talks about The Exorcist. So it's called Gust, Window, Womb, Man, for Reagan McNeil. It just takes one gust, a simple open window, divorce, a dark room. Young girl's broken home, doe-eyed as evil slips sure, squats vast in her mind. Needs vagina, throat, needs entryway to body, needs womb and a man. Possession takes root. Buyer's market to own man. The girl mere trade-in. Fucked with cross, hymen split. Raised plea on girl tummy. Girl mouth spewing filth. A game with girl piece. Tool girl to be wielded. Hurt. Down to the spun bone. Girl must be saved grace. Holy man must save her grace. He sucks gust, sprouts womb. By window leap sainthood, suicide. Oh, praise be, broken man on the stairs. Girl empty, token. Young girl not the point at all. Whole girl, vessel, thing. So that's a movie I really like, and I've written I've written a poem that kind of takes it apart. It is called The Exorcist, so I shouldn't be surprised it's about The Exorcist. But there I am, like, conversations about the movie. Very different than, yeah, sorry, I'm still digesting that one. Another type of horror film genre that I like is body horror, and that's where the horror is in the disintegration of the body or sprouting from the body. A great example is The Fly by Cronenberg. Yeah, it's also a poem about my father's death. So that's one way horror is useful. It does help. It did help me and does help me process things. It has an epigraph. Woe to us who have lost faith in plastics. in microbeads floating ocean wide, swallowed like Jonah, like the hope of immortal freshness. And that's dialogue from a movie I made up called Attack of the Killer Tupperware 2, Something's Rotten in the State of Denmark. Attack of the Killer Tupperware. Never wanted to be that sad sack Lazarus, half rotten in the town of Bethany's son, but alive again. Only one story to tell, of waking with demigod eyes upon him, horror of horrors. With my father's body burned, be-earned, and scattered into lake water, I don't have to think about the after death. Fire is the opposite of putridity, though so much is lost in the clean flame. Left alone, what was once alive remains alive. New beings stowing away, more alien than E.T. with his light bulb healing finger, his simple touch reversing entropy to the holy whole. Spielberg's puppet Jesus had to abandon planet, couldn't stay among us mortals. We'd exhaust him with our slowly and then quickly falling to messy pieces that only he could pick up and glue back together. Thank all the gods I don't believe in. We have no superpower, nothing molded and clear and engineered to lead us back to birth, potential. Body politic. I cast a vote for the dissolution of the easy state of wholeness, decaying in the shutaway as if in a glass cloche. If the fridge is the world, Tupperware is first panic room, then mausoleum. Suction, airtight burping seal, a boulder rolled in the cave's mouth, but still a corruption seethes unseen. Zombie pulp berries growing hirsute on the middle shelf, furry aberrations stacked away next to the ignored condiments, pickled this and that. Heat misting in the cold, condensation, water droplets on an inner lid. Clutter and reek caged by design until it can no longer be ignored and must be dealt with. There is an end, thank biology and time, thank nothingness, fade to blackest black. And I'm gonna end with a longer poem. Thanks, I could see everyone clapping and stuff, I really appreciate it. This is a list poem, and it's kind of the thesis of the collection partially in my head. So my theory is what horror is for giving you a place to practice fear in. Not enclosed by time and like location. Generally you're watching it, like if you're not in the movie theater, you're at home or somewhere you feel safe in to watch a horror film, and then you practice fear and then you put it away. That has been a very useful, I'm glad I wrote this book before the pandemic started, because I was practicing the fear that I've been kind of feeling lately. And it's a list poem. I went to the Internet Movie Database, imdb.com, and I found a list of like 100 greatest horror films, and I looked at all the locations, and basically I wrote down all the locations and zhuzhed it up a bit. Places in which to be wary. In the predictable Gothic miscellanea of convents, funeral parlors, hospitals, perma-vacancy motels, all the cliches wrapped in scarlet-stained shrouds, at mysterious abandoned carnivals, circus sideshows, caves, coated in the dust of excavation sites, in churches and brothels, in foggy graveyards and dripping dungeons, in large spooky rented houses, in maximum security asylums, in each ominous orphanage. Far-flung and remote, villages picturesque and small, say rustic with a rusty chainsaw, say let me alone to my thoughts while even the grass grows sharp as blades, in old wooden churches of abandoned villages, in sleepy New Mexico towns, all cabins in all the woods, in the French countryside, yes, I said all cabins, in Maryland forests, at your widowed aunt's country home, to escape the rat race, but rat teeth continue to grow and must gnaw on something, probably you. In new farmhouses and old farmhouses, never trust a farmhouse. Even in space, at Antarctic research stations, in the backwoods of Texas. In the suburbs, in spotless homes, at your neighbors, in the outskirts of Stockholm. When you close your eyes, it's so easy to be there that you think, what's the worst that can happen as it's happening? In quaint Washington hamlets, the quainter, the more dangerous. In Midwestern burgs, the suburbs, all of them. In wares so familiar they lure you into surrendering survival. In bathrooms of all kinds, gas stations, in the normal world, on the internet, so many shopping malls, in your very own home. Places you pay extra to pantomime safety. What a scalpel-wielding farce. In mansions, manors, estates, in sorority houses, new gated communities. In mansions, castles, especially German ones, in the upper class houses of white in-laws. In greater and lesser cities, in Paris, in Parisian apartments, in Greenwich Village, on every ghost brotherly loving street of Philadelphia, in the Cabrini Green projects, on the Berlin subway, in certain London quarters, strike that pretty much all of England. Bodily harm near bodies of water, in Venetian canals, strange Californian seasides, in the Bay Area, waterlogged, a baptism of blood diffusing from flashy red to languid pink, in Bodega Bay, on the Isle of St. Sebastian, at beach resorts, especially on holiday weekends, on oft ignored islands off the coast of Scotland and Scandinavia. Something to learn, to trust your instincts in places of learning, veterinary schools, at proms, in every single laboratory, at anything that calls itself an institute, at prestigious dance academies, at pre-elementary and high schools, at universities. No matter what your major is, study how to dash down a corridor without slipping on a puddle of your best friend. How the cute boy might just be a killer despite his wavy hair and dimpled smile, or maybe just cruel, gifting a small death for you to carry forever. And maybe this is what horror movies are for, lessons to carry forever. You think running might help, shifting the car to drive and gunning it, but danger lurks while in motion in every manner of car, train, plane, boat, from town to town, country to country, the whole goddamn earth as it spins and pitches through ever expanding space. Thanks for listening, everyone.
There are so many things I could say about this reading. Just a few is that, one, hearing the poems again, I was like taken, like even more than the first time I heard them. They like, oh my, they still held all the surprise for me as they did the first time. The second thing is, I think no one will ever think the same about Tupperware again.
I wish there was a movie called Attack of the Killer Tupperware.
I
It
think
should exist.
It should exist. I absolutely agree with you. And again, what I so appreciate is when we get a window into some into a poet's ability to take us through the window of unique. It's that fine line between obsession and meditation, like doing both around horror, the obsession of it, but there's a really deep meditation and thinking about it. And
I think I referred to that as hyper focus because I have ADHD. Just zoning in and 4 hours have gone by. I haven't eaten. Okay, time to go.
Thank you for bringing another final girl to us today. And I look forward to the next time you're with us.
Thank you.
That's Claire Kelly, everyone. The chapbook is another final girl. Well, I'm going to take us to in my memory, the state of Nebraska, but joining us from Minneapolis is an old friend, Jim Cihlar, whose work I've been following since I knew him in graduate school, and has done such accomplished things in his illustrious career around poetry, a person devoted to the art and craft of poetry in every crevice, nook and cranny of his existence. And it's been a real honor to follow your devotion to poetry in my own strange way that I follow folks, not in like a horror flick way. So thank you, Jim. It's so great to have you with us today. And here's the more formal biography. James Cihlar is the author of The Shadowgraph from the University of New Mexico Press 2020. Jim's previous books include Rancho Nostalgia and Undoing. His poetry chapbooks are A Conversation with My Imaginary Daughter, What My Family Used, and Metaphysical Bailout. His writings have appeared in the American Poetry Review, the Three Penny Review, Lambda Literary Review, and the Gay and Lesbian Review. Jim receives a BA from the University of Iowa, where he studied in the Writer's Workshop, and his PhD, also from my alma mater, the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. Jim's received 3 Minnesota State Award Board Fellowships in Poetry and a Glenna Lucia Award from Prairie Schooner, one of the longest standing literary magazines in the country, published out of the University of Nebraska. He is the publisher of Howling Bird Press in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And please welcome Jim, and please visit his website. Thanks, Jim.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. That's very kind of you, very generous for your introduction, and also thanks for inviting me to this series. And it's great to be here among all these wonderful readers and attentive poetry fans. So with that, I guess I'll go ahead and dive in. So shoot me a message in the chat if you can't hear me, or if anything goes wonky. Oh, okay, cool. So, and it's also nice to follow Claire, because the Shadowgraph also deals with some movie tropes. I'm a big fan in particular of old film. And my husband actually is a huge horror movie fan. So we just watched the other night, I think it's called It 2, the sequel. It was not good, but
I didn't see. I walked out. We had a very bad reaction to the first one. I had to leave
okay.
the theater crying. So
No.
I haven't seen the second one.
Okay, yeah, well, it can go down the list on the must see. Oh, there was another one we saw. You were talking about England being like a site of horror, and I honestly don't remember the name of it. We taped it off of TCM, but it was like 1971 British film about it was supposedly futuristic, in which uh, crops got infected by a virus and it started killing everyone, and it's kind of
Day of the Triffids? Was it based on John Wyndham, maybe?
I don't think it was that one.
Okay.
It was a family that kind of had to flee London and went to the Lake Country, and just horrible things happened along the way. But anyway, so anyway, it's fun to be in this context.
Could that have been The Returned? Was it a zombie movie?
There was, let me think. No, not zombies. Sorry. I know. Isn't it interesting though that there's so many? Like we can come up with all these other titles that all kind of fill that.
The Returned was a zombie movie with a difference. Highly recommended.
Okay, don't know that one. Interesting. Okay, so I'll Google it, and if I can find it, or I'll ask my husband, and then I'll post it somewhere, maybe in the chat. Okay, so starting with this, many of the poems, not all, but many are based on, speaking of obsession and meditation, I'm obsessed a bit with the film actress Barbara Stanwyck, and this book was an occasion for me to kind of read all of the Hollywood biographies I could on her. She never wrote her own tell-all, and so in a way that sort of prompted some even scholarly research into her life and career. So in 1939, she starred in the movie Union Pacific. It was about the railroad, and it premiered in Omaha, which is where I'm from, Omaha, Nebraska. So 1939 premiere. They kind of put fake fronts up around town to pretend it was the 19th century, and they encouraged viewers to dress in period costume, and she came to town, and there was a parade and such. So that's a little bit of background for this poem. Also, that in Hollywood or outside of Hollywood, she founded her own horse ranch with the wife of her agent, Zeppo Marx. She was really good friends with his wife, and so together they started her horse ranch. Apparently it's still standing, and the valley is kind of sprawled all the way around it, but the name of the horse ranch was a combination of their names, Stanwyck and Marx. So the poem's called Marwick, and it begins with the quote, "I wear myself out, keeping myself calm," from Barbara Stanwyck. I can love them all now, because what does it matter? A chemical in the brain makes time spin faster. The rolling wheel of aftermath loses heat as it tumbles down the dell. A Christmas card my mother bought is my memory palace. All the elves asleep in a row of beds on a travertine balcony above the hearth. Let's pin it down to blueprints. How much closer can we get to living? Stanwyck built a castle in the Southern California desert and made it look like Camelot. She rode the train from Hollywood to 70 years ago, when FDR pressed a button in the White House. Confetti rained down on Omaha. I bet God will understand the smallness of my wants. In the middle of summer, I miss summer. Marwick will be my heaven. I've peopled it already with ghosts of the living. And apparently that was part of the promo. They did have FDR pressing a button in the White House. I don't know why. Okay, the next poem is a poem about theaters. One that we went to when I was a kid frequently is called the Council Bluffs Drive-In Theater. The blue corrugated back of the screen matched the parabola roof that sheltered the ticket box. We piled in my dad's big Chevy to see a movie, arriving at dusk, playing on the swing sets below the screen. The rhythmic rush of being pushed outward to kick at the audience of anonymous cars before falling backward like a second thought, waiting until dark so the movie could start. What possessed my parents to take us to an R-rated movie? Maybe we took what we got at the drive-in, whatever was showing, and no one asked questions if a blue-collar family with underage kids rolled in to see Bonnie and Clyde. I was 6 years old and remember an extended scene playing out on the screen of a shootout punctuated by the close-up of a hand with a finger missing. And that's it. My attention was more focused on the scene within the car, on soda bubbles clinging to the edge of the circle atop a waxed paper cup, on the heavy face of the electronic speaker, its spiral neck tethered to a post beyond my father in the driver's seat, my mother on the passenger side, and my three sisters and me playing in the back. How the drive-in made us both outside and in at the same time, an inkling that home comes with you while the miracle of a soundtrack piped into the car makes you notice the weight of every simple action long after the movie is over. The slide of soles on a step, the click of a key in the lock, and the door opening to the glow of a light above the kitchen sink. Next one is not a movie poem. It's just a kind of a home ownership poem. We live in an older neighborhood in St. Paul. The house was built in 1885 and happens to have shingle siding now. And the shingles kind of needed some repair at one point. And I noticed that a bird, I'm in my office / guest room right now, and a bird took advantage of a hole in the outside wall to build a nest. So this poem's about that. It's called Bird, Bath, and Beyond. We hear it beyond our afternoon nap, a scratching in the walls, like mice scurrying or a phantom branch dragging in the wind 2 stories up where no trees reach. From outside, we see a shingle has fallen away, exposing the opening for an old stovepipe, dead-ended by plaster on the inside. A bird has made her nest in the hole in the wall. A cliff dweller bathed in sunlight more generous than any cast in last July. From below, we see her beak protruding from the tall plane of shingles. Her profiles bob and jerk as she holds sentinel. Back inside, we rest our heads against the plaster, the bird in the wall. Beyond October, it's hard to say if safety will remain in unlikely places, but in our hearts, we hope it will. Next, I'm reading a longer-ish, for me at least, poem called Stella Dallas, and this one is kind of engaging with the 1930s, it might be another 39 movie, Stella Dallas, that starred Barbara Stanwyck, and she was married for part of her life at least to Robert Taylor, who was a Hollywood actor from Nebraska. So okay, Stella Dallas. Anne Shirley, who plays the daughter, grew up on the RKO lot. Graduated from the Studio High School. For her 18th birthday, Goldwyn gave her a car. Hollywood was her everyday. She'd put in her shift on the soundstage, then go home and cry because the director would not direct her. In Stella Dallas, the daughter marries money. Even though we know real life is always about the young and sexy, this movie is all about the mother. Bird-breasted and built for speed, Stanwyck wore 3 stockings in order to have thick ankles. She said it was a matter of upholstery. She stuffed cotton in her cheeks for jowls. My poor old mom took it on the chin. My dad dropped her when his first love became available again. My sister remembers more than I do, how our stepmother walked the hall on Sunday mornings, saying, "Your mother is a whore," saying, "You will all wind up in hell." My sister says she's buried now in my father's hometown, that hag. Anne Shirley played the younger Stanwyck in So Big. If the daughter is the mother, is she a premonition or nostalgia? My sister's middle name is Anne, in honor of our mother's mother. Really, I have just a handful of memories. The burgers at the cafe in Underwood, where my father took us. My sister remembers the name of the place. I just remember the taste of too much pepper. Or walking my father's farm after school, finding cacti growing in a stream bed, chasing the planter behind my father's tractor. My sister says it's time to let that handful go, because it all comes down to dirt. They say Stanwyck came from nothing. Even though her family dates back to 1740, her father left them to work on the Panama Canal after her mother died. Her sister raised her. Stanwyck's husband, Robert Taylor, was born in a small town in Nebraska, just like my father. During the making of all those movies we love her for, Stanwyck was suing the studios to get paid, angry and grief-stricken at the loss of her sister. In both the silent and the sound versions of Stella Dallas, at the end, the camera closes up on the mother crying at the fence as the story struggles to make sense. And there were 2 versions of, she was in the second version, but I think there had been like an earlier silent version. Stella Dallas was based on a movie. The movie was based on a novel. Okay, so just 2 more. Next one's called The Night Walker. It's sort of later in Stanwyck's life. So The Night Walker, also the name of a movie that she did. On the arm of fashion designer Nolan Miller at the 1974 Academy Awards, it's a long way from the Ziegfeld Follies or the Strand Roof, dancing with the Keep Cool cuties. Forgotten too, the scandal of Hollywood's unmarried husbands and wives, which forced Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor to make it legal. The days of Sugar Puss O'Shea, her hair all doozied up, are gone. Tell Ralph Edwards, and this is your life, she'll take a powder. Tell Richard Avedon to knock this shit off. In the divorce decree, she stuck Taylor with paying her 15% of his gross earnings for the rest of his life. She never remarried. At Hollywood parties, she was the tallest person in the room, even sitting down. But just like us, she was waiting for an opportunity to leave. She knew the world moved on without her. The crew still called her Queen or Missy, but after age 50, you slip to second billing. So when William Castle offered her The Night Walker co-starring Taylor, she said, "You better ask Bob." He said, "It's as if we were never married." We may assume now all that's left of the diegesis is for the 2 old sinners to do a post-mortem together outside the limelight. What becomes a legend most? 4 glasses of water in the morning, a big hearty breakfast, a breeze through the window, not to have to talk to anyone. And yeah, if you see it was like a Black Llama was an ad campaign, and they had Hollywood celebrities wearing furs, which, thank goodness they wouldn't do now. But yeah, the photo of her is an outtake, but they ran with it, where she was basically getting kind of annoyed with him. So Okay, next and last poem is a newer one. It's called Taking Care of Animals. It's in 3 stanzas. So here we go, Taking Care of Animals. And I'm reading it from my screen here. They won't tell you when they hurt, or by the time they do, it's too late. They would not call themselves noble or proud. When you reach out, they raise what they want touched. A chin, a shoulder, the back, the butt, if they want to be touched. They would just as soon wipe their nose on your arm as sit at your feet. I have held sick piglets in my lap, rested a frozen calf's head on my thigh, chased a runaway dog down an alley, injected fluids under an old cat's skin, stood over countless animals as they ate, drank, peed, shat, grateful for the operation of the alimentary canal, the respiratory system, the circulation of blood that binds us. The holiest things we can do are in service to the animals. They witness our appetites, our mistakes, and they wait. No human you know will be as forgiving. When they are ready to die, they find a place to hide. God bless. We are not born to fight, to lose or win. What we have is bone and skin, something beautiful and common. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. So great to be hearing poems from the newest collection, the Shadowgraph, from the University of Nebraska Press 2020. And I also really, I love the category of poetry that is biopic poetry. Like I love getting into the character of a character through poetry, and really no better actor to do that with than the amazing Barbara Stanwyck, and the connections that I have with Barbara Stanwyck.
Oh yeah.
She was in the 1953 film Titanic.
Yeah.
Yes. So my obsession with Titanic intersects with Barbara Stanwyck
Okay.
in that way.
Yeah.
And loving that film. And 2 of her other films that I grew up with. Favorite film in our family, Christmas in Connecticut.
I love that one. It's so funny.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So amazing.
Yep.
And then Kim, that's one of Kim's favorite movies.
I didn't know that.
We
Wow.
talked about it.
Hmm.
And then finally a film, if folks have never seen it, Jim, I know you've seen it, you have to have seen it. But it's like such an incredible social commentary film. Meet John Doe.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
Never seen Meet John Doe.
Yeah.
Frank Capra was the director.
Yeah.
An incredible film. So thank you for taking us to also the drive-in, along to the drive-in as well, to see how poetry and film do their fabulous intersections.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
my friends, we're going to go to our final reader for today. And I just happen to have a glass from the mill. It's this coffee shop it's more than a coffee shop, in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I'm pretty sure that's the first place that I met Marge, but many times I would see her there writing. She had writing groups there, and it was a hub for everyone kind of in Lincoln, and all the writers would kind of go hang out there. I wrote poems there. Kim's written poems there. Jim would have written poems there. Anyone, everybody spent their time at the mill. Anybody who was trying to write poetry seemed to be intersecting with the mill. So I just always, I took my mill glass out today. I wanted to do a little, it's just water, H2O, but a little raise of the glass.
Yeah.
To the mill, and for all those poems that have been written in the mill, and for the inspiration that you provided for me, seeing like a poet that I knew was doing her work while I was sitting there trying to figure out how I was going to do mine. You know, I really think of you as, you know, one of those mentors for me, one of those mill mentors. Well, a little bit more about Marge Saiser from the formal biography before we hear just their beautiful poems. Marjorie Saiser holds a bachelor's degree in creative writing from the University of Nebraska. Her book, Losing the Ring in the River, from Mary Burritt Christensen series at the University of Nebraska New Mexico Press, won the Willa Award in 2014. Her newest collection, The Track the Whales Make, has been published in Ted Kuzer's Contemporary Poetry Series at the University of Nebraska Press. And the book deals with all the myriad ways love goes right and love goes wrong. Sounds a little bit like there could be some horror in there.
Right.
Please welcome Marge Saiser.
Well, have to say, I saw a lot of Barbara Stanwyck movies because my parents owned a theater in a small town. So I popped popcorn, went up to the projection booth where my dad was running the films, and watched some of Barbara Stanwyck and others through that little opening from the projection booth down to the screen. Brought back a lot, that was a lot of good times. So I want to thank Jim for those poems, all of those poems, and all of the readers. Thank you so much, Sandy, for providing a time of poetry. For me, it's afternoon of poetry. And appreciate the people who come, the audience. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim and Dawn and Sandy. So not all the ways, probably some of the ways that love goes right and love goes wrong. I don't think we're going to run out, are we, if we want to write about ways love goes right and love goes wrong. The track the whales make. And I'll begin with Love Goes Wrong. It's called I Had a Marriage in Those Days. Each row of corn was snug up against a neighboring row, took its shape from it, gave its shape to the next row. When I drove the roads, the corn ticked by, agreeing on everything. I've been told the soil was a kind called Chernozem, which takes centuries to be that dark and fertile. But I stood in a kitchen on gray linoleum, layers of wax on it, layers I myself had added to. I heard the lambs cry, penned off for weaning, a fence keeping them from the warm udder, the dripping milk. I didn't know what I was doing those days. But the marriage began to be clear, in the way a field of corn will tell the truth about the lay of the land, how the corn can't be level when the land isn't, how it has its inevitable high places, its inevitable falling away. Draw what is there. In art class, the instructor says, draw your hand, not an idea of hand, but what is really there. My pencil scratches over paper telling the truth, wrinkles, crookedness, and bulges. I let the ring fall to the side as it often does. Let the tunneling veins go where they have to go. But left out is this. The day I pulled your hair, my son, when you broke something. It was too much, all of it. Not the green plastic forgettable trifle you broke. I mean my work, my union with your father. It was too much and it was too little. And you were there, young and perfect and close by my hand. You say you don't remember, so I don't mention it again. But I remember and have not let it go. Let me turn my hand over, watch the ends of the fingers catch light. Notice that knuckles are only creases over the bones that do the work. Let me see what is in front of me, opening and closing. Let what I did and failed to do drop like a leaf from my hand. For my daughter, when they laid you on my belly and cut the cord and wrapped you and gave you to my arms, I looked into the face I already loved, the cheekbones, the nose, the deep place the eyes opened to. I thought, then this is the one I must teach, must shape and nurture. I was sure I should. How was I to know you would become the one to show me how kindness walks in the world? Some days the daughter is the mother, is the hand that reaches out over the pond, sprinkling nourishment on the water. Some days I am the lucky koi, rising from below, opening the circle of my mouth to take it in. The story part of it. The story part of it is that the tractor was parked running at the top of the hill. And my sister Jenny, 10 years old, climbed up and took a seat at the wheel. The story part of it is that my father worked on something attached behind the tractor, the digger or the chain perhaps. The story does not tell all. It tells what he said to Jenny, his instruction. It tells what he said into the fierce wind blowing that day, the roar of the wind and the roar of the tractor. He said, whatever you do, don't step on the clutch. The wind took his words, flipped and turned them, gusted them, even as it gusted everything, even as it tossed the ends of the red scarf Jenny wore, flapping it out and back, out and back. Jenny heard him say, step on the clutch, and she did. The tractor lurched down the hill like an animal freed. The story, part of it, tells how the tractor rolled, gaining, how Jenny stood steadfast on the clutch, hanging on to the wheel, her hair and her red scarf flying with the speed of it. How the tractor flew down the slope until it hit the barbed wire fence at the bottom, broke through and rolled over. How she was flung off and the clutch engaged and killed the engine. Everything was at that second silent from the roaring, and Jenny was face down on the grass, alive, but he, my father, thought she was dead. And years later, when my father was dying, I called Jenny. You'd better come, I said. She arrived at the hospital and I met her at the main door to show her through the maze, the halls, to my father's last room. We turned the turn and could see him ahead, no longer a man at work, or rather a man doing the new work of dying. He sat in the bed, tubes into the skin of the backs of his hands. He looked up and caught sight of her, of us. And then he did what Jenny cannot explain, get over, understand, make sense of. He put his hand over his eyes. He looked down at the floor while we came to him. The story, part of it, is that Jenny cannot let go of this. She told me, it's what he's always done. He did not want to see me, to look at me. No, I told her, no, it was to keep from crying. My love with his saw has taken the cedar down. I am standing on the stump where the tree had stood when he comes around the corner, sees me motionless, staring, and asks, is anything wrong? Nothing is wrong. Everything reaches the end, aromatic or not, unmarked or not. Nothing lasts forever, and it's time for the cedar to go. It stood all those nights, all those 1 o'clocks, 2 o'clocks, under the moons I never got up to look at. The cedar, a few thousand nights in the wind, a few feet from where we lay, he and I, separately dreaming, or one awake, listening to the other, breathing. The cedar he climbed every December in boots and gloves when he put up the Christmas lights, using the limbs, their parallel pattern, for a ladder to reach the roof. The cedar was there, hanging on in dry times, its roots making very small, steady progress, and its molecules lining up densely, purple and deep red. When the tree is opened, as it is now, its colors surprising and stark. Out into the air spills a faint comfort that, like moonlight, will not quite fade. I save my love. I save my love for what is close, for the dog's eyes, deep brown, when I take a wet cloth to wash his face. I save my love for the smell of coffee at the mill, the roasted near burn of it, especially the remnant that stays later in the fibers of my coat. I save my love for what stays, the white puff my breath makes when I stand at night on my doorstep. That mist doesn't last, disappeared, like your car turning the corner. You at the wheel waving. Your hand a quick tremble in a brief illumination, palm and fingers. Your face toward me. You had turned on the overhead light so I would see you for an instant. See you waving, see you gone. Well, this one didn't want to be found, but I got it. A poem of love gone wrong. What I shouted and he shouted. It's 3 stanzas. One or the other has to decide that's enough. Nothing has changed, or it has changed all it can. The sky is going to be a color, and the moon is going to show up in some kind of washed out curve. The echo of that slap has made the difference. We had only walls, rugs, window. The singing left my body, that crooked tree where the singing had wanted to live. When I have hurt him as much as I can, and a friend of mine, a singer, has set this to music, sings it. When I have hurt him as much as I can. When I have fingered the slingshot lodged for so long in my pocket. When I have picked up a stone he, beleaguered, has dropped in passing. When I have aimed at the patch of skin between his eyes. When I have pulled back and let loose. When my stone, sharp cornered as a word, sinks in and in. When its burn equals some of the wounds I carry. Then, as our mothers did and our fathers did, he will lie down lonely, and I will lie down lonely, touching through the blanket. Distance enough, distance enough. Here's a poem about love that wants to last and last and last. It's the title poem. The track the whales make. You and I on the boat notice the track the whales make. The huge ring their diving draws for a moment on the surface of the water. I want to believe when we can no longer walk across a room for a hug, can no longer step toward the arms of the other, there will be this, some delicate trace that stays. And below, out of sight, dark mammoth shadow, flick of flipper, body of delight, diving deep. And I'll close with, we wait for the Trogon. And I thank you for hanging in there. What a great thing you do, Sandy, and Don and Kim, to provide poetry for us week after week. Thank you. We wait for the Trogon. We sit on a fallen tree off the trail. Nobody else in these woods today. White trunks of sycamores around us. We have been furious with each other again, but putting it away for now, not sure why. The climb behind us, and this being the grove where a rare bird has been seen by others. There, you say. And sure enough, the Trogon is on a swaying twig, his green back to us. This is what we wait for, what we've read about. We who have disagreed most disagreeably about this and that. And now comes a wild contraption we have no control over, which, can you believe it, is flying closer, is choosing a branch in front of our faces. Its iridescent head and shoulders, its bright eye will leave us, fly away soon. And what does it matter, this thing with feathers, to have it upside down on the retina for a brief time? But take my hand, love, and like the mortals we are, let us see this marvel we have and have not together.
Thank you so much, Marge. I'm just so struck by what I love about your poems, and I've always loved, is the way that they take us into like a deep introspection, like just within a single line, like line after line after line. And I'm not very good at that. And I've always looked to your poems for the way that the line constructs that connection between memory, knowing, and unknowing. like trying to bridge all of those things together. So thank you so much. The poems are from the new book, newish book now, The Track the Whales Make, from the University of Nebraska Press. Everybody, before I just want to say thank you to all of our readers in our new book showcase today. We started out with Carolyne Wright, moved on to Claire Kelly, Jim Cihlar, and we closed today's new book showcase with Marjorie Saiser. I truly marveled at just the unique way that you each brought your poetry to our screens today, our screens, our small movie screens. Well, I'm going to give you a few highlights of what's coming up in October. And if any of you have upcoming readings or announcements, this is going to be a good time for you to feel free to type those in the chat. As you know, we join you again, can't do this without Don and Kim. Absolutely. Their devotion is of the utmost highest to poetry, and I'm so grateful to them. All for the month of October, 5 readings. October is packed. We're gonna have upcoming next week, the new books from Lost Horse Press. Christine Holbert will bringing us some of the new titles from Lost Horse Press. One of them will be Masquerade. Also joining us will be Catherine Hunt, Zvinia Orlowski, and Ali Kinsell will be reading from the translation from Eccentric Days of Hope and Sorrow. And joining us from the Ukraine and Germany will be the poets Luba Yakimchuk and Svetlana Lavochna. Oh my God, my apologies. Lavochkina from Germany. We'll be hearing poetry both in translation and in the original. And it's going to be a remarkable showcase of books from the press that's brought you so many books that you're aware of through our series, like Carolyne, and also that Lily Ledbetter anthology, as well as Nasty Women Poets. Remember when we did that reading? That's also Lost Horse Press. But one of the things that has been a tremendous feature of Lost Horse Press is bringing Ukrainian poetry to into English translation for us. So we're so excited to be able to showcase one of the titles from the new Ukraine series that Christine Holbert is putting together at Lost Horse Press. Well, on October 10th, join us because we'll be having poets coming over from Ireland reading from their collections. Jessamine O'Connor, Hugh Macmillan, Neil Young, and Ethna Hand will be on hand with us reading from their newest collections. And on October 17th, all of you have the opportunity to join us potentially as the features in one of our open mics. October 24th, I'm so excited to share with you that Ashley M. Jones, the poet, will be joining us. She's just been named the Poet Laureate of Alabama. And she's the first African-American poet to have been named Poet Laureate in the state of Alabama. I had asked her to come many months ago before we knew, and just like in the past couple weeks, she was just named the Poet Laureate of Alabama. Joining her will be Elizabeth Levinson, Karen Poppy, a person you've seen read with us a number of times, and Judith Kerman, also joining us from California. On October 31st, Halloween, we're doing Trick or Treat. Come join us for an open mic, but we have two folks who are going to come read some poems. One of them is Claire Kelly's going to be joining us back, sharing some horror on Halloween, as well as Cindy Veach reading poetry about the Salem witch trials. That'll be on Halloween afternoon or evening on October 31st. Come bring your poems of Trick or Treat on Halloween. That's the month of October, my friends. Register for all of our Cultivating Voices live poetry readings on our event pages that Kim Ports Parsons devotedly puts together for each reading. And we have them posted for every week for you to join us live here in Zoom, as you've done today, or to watch live from our Facebook group page. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It was just a fabulous, fabulous afternoon for me of poetry. As I say, I always have the best seat in the house, and I'm tremendously grateful to be able to share poetry with all of you every Sunday. Thanks, of course, to Don Krieger and Kim Ports Parsons for their production support and vivid, inviting graphics. And I always like to end and remind you all, although poets really need no reminders of this, but our humanity really depends on our deep listening of one another. And that's why we come together every week. So in the spirit of that deep listening, keep supporting each other, take very good care of yourselves, and of course, your beloveds. And that includes the poets that you meet here on Cultivating Voices live poetry. And I'd be nothing if I didn't encourage you every week to keep writing your miraculous poems. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week with Lost Horse Press.